Oh no, I didn't have to do that, or maybe I did. Let me see. I can split the screen. It's showing up for medical college. Am I still on this? Or did I already do that? Okay, I think I already did that. Let me go on here. Okay. So brown pepper and hair was damn it. A Navy veteran who wanted me to wrap that. Okay, anyways, chaos laws, chips on the table, sapiosexual. So, best friend, I don't think I have to go too much into anything other than in theater class, if there's any clips of me, maybe. The Japanese song, I'd like to be able to do something in Japan, obviously. Chess pieces. Nobody's a little more graphic. Inomoramento, more graphic. I'm trying to go through stuff that I talk about in the other thing. Well, I wish I had it open. I don't know. Okay, so I don't know if I put good night on here, but that would be kind of graphic. Spit Factor, I think, has multiple languages. Baby used around me. Probably isn't that difficult. Precious, Sanctum, Animus, Refugium. Some of this stuff I haven't had checked over, like any type of editing for pronunciation or the blogs or anything. It's like a big Friends with Benefits. Stacks of Racks, Boulevard. So Boulevard, I wanted to do the bow ties from the Southern Methodist University quartet band, I think, or oops. And then beer flans. Oh, maybe. Nope. Beer flans would be something with beer and plants, physical plants, not just where you make beer at. So, let's see. I think I mixed some of this under faith for the .faith thingy, as far as like which ones would donate back to my church or any churches on topic of whatever it does with it. Lip speak your name. Sacred text, I think I have to record sacred text. I don't think I've recorded that because I think that's partially the Greek language. And then this is for like music video stuff. So I probably need to make note of that. Feel alive, closure, evolution of the mind. I don't even know if Crescenda's agenda is a song or if that was like me making notes. Not one to save me. Fashionista, I think, would be pretty simple because you would be able to put some of my fashion designs for Pantagate in it. Broken heart. Blessed thou art. Da, 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 da. When kingdoms crumble. Smexy Beach. Act of God. Empire Legacy. I'm going to need to work on Hi, May, Niquil. I don't know if I said that right because it's been a long time since I've taken Arabic. Frost yourself. Frost yourself, I think would be, but I think frost yourself would be easier to do just because it's like an attitude type of a song. And the Don't Watch Me Work. Asaline. Asaline is a book publishing company, so I'm making up that word in reference to the larger books that are oversized. Entrepreneur, I was just thinking about this kind of relatively into what entrepreneurs look like in terms of being super single parenty, kind of in the sense of like most moms that want to work and that they want to take care of their kids or they want to help with their kids or whatever the case may be. I think that song also lists some of the steps that it takes for you to be an entrepreneur, but it kind of has the essence of why most single mothers, at least from my experience of being a single mother or partially being raised by a single mother, is that you are always doing just everything for your kids. It's like you can't fail at being the provider, being the counselor, being, the person that they lead on, and just everything else in between. Cone, because it has the stuff for the brain to change, and I think that in Peace of Mind, because of the tones that are in it, I had to stream them live for free. So I think that whatever I paid for on whatever the thing was in order to do the music videos for that is self-sufficient enough, unless someone actually wants to spend money to make that into a different type of three-dimensional for whatever they do in some of those sciences of the meditation sides. On Smash Legends, I don't know. I have to go back and read the lyrics. Lovesick Virus, Jurisprudence. I haven't done this yet, but I did have it got legal for Crescenda. So jurisprudence is more about something in the legal system concerning the word, what jurisprudence is, and then kind of the way that it's described in the song. So I would probably, for anything that identifies like that, as far as it being for educational on that side, I would still put that in a separate thing to authenticate the series of how it falls under that. But in this context, since I'm discussing like the legal side of the topic of jurisprudence, I would also probably me, just as the person that is wanting to protect the integrity of you making sure that you're appropriately using blockchain or other technology to show the copyright for, I don't want to call it layers, but for the jurisdictions that you would want to do something, I would say if you're using like the word of jurisdiction, as far as like where places and things and people are concerned within your albums, because most of the time I don't get really in specific with that. As far as I don't, be in my format, I try not to call out individuals. If it's a place I want to travel or visit, I mention it. But for the most part, like I take out most of the affiliation of like over using terminologies as far as like if it would be attacking someone, for example. So for jurisprudence or something that like modus operandi, right? Like that's a term that we talk about in both the criminal justice and a legal format. I would sit there and say, like using that and then adding the other songs that are on the albums within that fall over what your discussion topic is over the legalities in it. I would say that you would want to timestamp physically making the representation of those works so that you're able to utilize whatever teams you're working with to make and to convey the, I don't know if you want to call it the interests, but if you want to get really specific to how you're going to protect yourself legally when you come up with ideas together as teams, I say since I talk about doing stuff where they call it open courseware or something, if you're going to share it within institutions because you have other programs outside that are attracting people that are just kind of learning a little bit about something and they're not being certified under your organization, or they're not taking the educational dollars in those physical classes, and it's just kind of like skill sets that are advertised in those formats. I would say because of like sharing the data, that it would be super important to say that when I take my entire collection of work, right, and I say all of this belongs to me because I alone am the author, that in itself is like a certificate worth of proof. But when you're going in between the topics of how that applies with like what I'm talking about here, if I want to say I have an album, even though I didn't think I would sell it that way, or I would let people use it freely that way to have discussions about, that physically goes over legalities of the legal system and it's related to lawyers and stuff like that. So I would say all of it individually stamped, every song under the topic, which is super cumbersome, but since I only have under 260 songs, the end point of keeping that when you're doing it on a larger scale of something would still say that your tediousness, right, is going to protect your intellectual property. That may be a little too technical for me to make like a legal expert opinion that I'm not certified to do, but I'm gathering from knowledge and trying to apply what I've read about those laws to say that that's how I would tell other people to do that. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that that's what I think would be more of the proper order to explain in terms of how things that go on the topics are protected when you're using software and timestamping and stuff to certify working with different teams over how you're going to collaborate within what you're doing. And I'm sorry, I've been working since like 2 a.m. We're falling asleep over here. So you in the background, Colors of Romance, Ocean, Sanctified, Queen, Magnus Opus. So I think for a music video of something like Magnus Opus, especially since some of this was written like in the middle of the pandemic, for example, I'm not saying it's emo, right? Like I'm not trying to put the weight of it being like disdained or something, or like depressive, or like, well, what is it going to be? Even though like in emergencies, right, when you're doing something to kind of move on from what you're in, I think this song kind of gives an example of like, what is the end of my Magnus Opus, right, by the definition, in terms of making it worth something of value for what I'm discussing here as far as how I wrote the song and the topics within it. Un cuarto con vista, a room with a view. I think that most of the lyrics will be self-explanatory as far as like the context of the nature behind that is like a discussion. And so I think that like a lot of the second languages, which I normally don't say, I say foreign languages, but because I'm here in Texas right now, I think most people know in Texas Spanish for English speakers is a second language and vice versa. English is a second language for Spanish speakers in this region. So I'm going to say that like that will still have to have done twice because it's in two different languages. It's mixed. So you'll have to have something that predominantly also has the subtitles and then vice versa, which I kind of skipped over with, because I don't have this memorized. Yeah, I don't think it was esports or something. But it was something that had to do with sports, and I had a lot of foreign language components in it. So, like, using a word freely to learn it into a different language, I think we'll still have to have some kind of, I don't want to call it subliminal messaging because that would be cruel to not disclose. I want to say that you would have to be able to make sure that that is either conveyed, and that's not a real estate agent doing that. I want to say that, like, when you're going to use multiple words outside of your native language in order to tell a story, and you're going to do it in a music video, I think you need to be able to explain to the people that are watching it where the words have the meaning in order for them to be able to both hear it and see it in a different way, and to explain the best way you can within the time frame. Because remember, we're talking about music videos here. We're talking about like 3 minutes, maybe max for a song. But I don't know how long music videos last, because it may be more or less depending on how you do it. Just that it's mentioned that someone is maybe not trained in that language to the ear because they're being exposed to it, in order to say that, like, they'll be able to understand the context. Because I think what gets lost, I want to just quote a movie I've never seen, but I had wanted to see, called Lost in Translation, that when you don't listen, because you're normally as a musician trained to listen twice as much as you also sing, but you have to hear it a certain amount to really get into it, and other stuff when people say that's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. But my point is that the collective part of understanding music that way, to be cued to listen. I've personally not read lyrics, and I think a song sounds like says something because I'm not actually listening like I think I'm listening to it, because a lot of stuff in motion that happens when you're with different large groups of people, or it's in a different social setting, or whatever the case may be, you may not actually know what it says until you listen to it and visually see it. So I think it's more important for me to just have that as the disclosure that says, this has other foreign language components if it's a completely different language too far off from a region, in order to publicize the nature and the meaning and the context behind it. Just up, slang stuff. I've done like maybe a few books of Japanese of slang that was given to me by someone's son, who I talked through that did a groundbreaking with Elon Musk in the region of South Texas. So, which has nothing to do with just stuff. But I wanted to mention that since it was someone, I think that was somebody who was, I could be wrong. But my point is that whoever introduced me to that, right? The word "just up" is something I researched specifically over newer words that people were like being trendy with, that is not normal parts of English grammar. And remember, I'm not an English major. So for the most part, I think that stuff that is kind of forming and coining in terms of like new words that are kind of used, what we say in the moment, in the era that people are doing them in. I don't know how long, just up is going to be cool, nor do I think I'm going to spend, millions of dollars in advertising requesting that everyone know what just up means, because I personally don't care. If someone else cares, that's great. They can spend their money and then they can make it a thing, as long as it gets done with something. So I don't even know if I can pronounce the next one, because I'm kind of falling asleep over here. San Luis. I gotta skip because I can't even say it. I probably have to learn it. The second upas. I probably do need to have a separate, though, proper English album, because I don't mean that I don't understand the English language, but as far as it being from the country of Europe and the context of that being specific to what the words are that I have researched for that region, I would still say that probably needs to be specified, that is the context of where it came from, and that it has to be due to explained and recorded either within the regions or green screen, when you're being able to share locations in which the context is really brought on camera. Perfect version, I don't think I have to go through that being kind of like a religious thing between you and, however you take that. I think I already talked about jealous. So I had put warranted because I split something there. So the word warranted is supposed to be the whole word. And I did that on purpose because TED is word for TED Talks. And then I have family whose last name is Warren. So I was being funny in splitting up the word of the language when the word wasn't supposed to be split up. So I did that on purpose. Love just can't wait. Love it, I don't really care. How much you put into that? Married man. So, I didn't think about this before, but I did think about it after I did my last live recording. And so married man, because I personally don't date married men, to my knowledge. I've had like some friends going through divorce or domestic violence or something where, we kind of end up having to take care of someone in the middle of their problems. And so for that stuff that puts the rest of us, especially when we're working together, in such an awkward position, that is actually what this song is about. So it's not like I'm not trying to I fell on my floor. I'm not trying to directly diss swingers, even though I'm not a swinger. I personally know that that's like a lifestyle choice, not my lifestyle choice. So, and I have dated swingers, so I just want to be clear that I have dated people where that is their thing, and it was still super awkward. I've had business partners like that, and it's kind of like the elephant in the room for me. They don't mean for that. Divine, I don't think it's a thing that I'll have to relook at the lyrics, but the context of what is divine, I think can be done a bunch of different ways. Now, for all generations, I think that since we're discussing generations, it would be good to have something like particular movies that go in to be historically accurate or that can convey, differences for generations within the context of however you want to explain that. So I made this count, just so you know. I found out my helicopter worked today, and you can hear it. I also don't know, because I'm speaking into the microphone trying to sit down, whether or not this will be audible. So I'm hoping it can hear me. So now I guess it's a good thing that I tried to sit on this couch, because it's not a real couch. You will fall into it, because it is hollow, and there's too much paperwork in it. So maybe I should move it in a second, because I don't know how long this list is. So, but I really like the setup. So how about we use a pillow and sit on the edge and see if that helps. Actually, let me bend it. Did I balance this enough? Probably not. Maybe it'll be okay. Let go of this torture. Kind of sensitive. I didn't think about that with the science, the psych, like instruments or whatever, but I probably need to add that. So I'm going to actually say that I'm going to take a note of it while I am on here. I normally don't do this to talk into a microphone. So let go of this torture needs to be listed under science, but psych instruments. So I'm saying it wrong because I'm falling asleep. The married man, I mentioned that also probably should have been labeled as like a psychology sensitive topic or something. Okay, so back to Conquer All the Darkness. I don't know, I have to reread the lyrics. I mentioned a lot of stuff for the medical sciences, and I kind of went briefly into how they should be like coded and how I was trying to say that I was giving like a range of emotions, if you will, to identify. But as far as like video, I think you can take real public videos, but I think it sounds more like you're trying to make it cool to follow pandemic healthcare, even though like it's such like as a healthcare worker, I know being in those environments, it can be really intense. So what I'm trying to say is there's a song that says like NASA Johnson style, but it's non-known style or something, right? And so I think that even though it's like, I will use emo for that word, even though it sounds like a super duper like emo song, which I normally don't use the word, it sounds like super whiny. I think that is like something that we also, when we talk about nightmares, right? Like that's kind of about nightmares. Having to go through a pandemic is a nightmare to me, anyways. That which is how we describe you have to face a bunch of darkness, right? So what I'm trying to say is that what I'm trying to say is, since I'm normally super sarcastic in emergency situations, I think that the way that this is written, in the context of how it is verbalized, that you would have to have both the seriousness of, the fact that we have a bunch of safety that wasn't always adhered to because of some issues related to supply chain and everything else that went into the pandemic, to being shut down, to being either essential, non-essential, everything's essential, nothing's essential, kind of a context. And then it just sounds, I want to say, overly nerdy in a sarcastic way that's like awkward. So validum, I have to make sure that I'm pronouncing that right because I think that's an English word, like from Britain or whatever. So I don't know if I'm pronouncing it too accurately. Life of Luxury, you could probably read through that. The Pantidote, I would use my own fashion designs. I discussed class rig. So class rig in the terms of showing off your class rigs and that it being in that context for music videos. Courtesy adieu is kind of more intimate. So, however that's written. I'm going to skip over Clockwork is an Orange because we kind of went into depth with it. In depth with it. On the other side, kind of sad. Sanskrit writ, same rule applies. I bet it's what they live in this on it. Let me see if I can do this a little taller. Okay. So Sanskrit writ, because that is literally when I attempted, before I wrote the song, I attempted to physically write poetry in Sanskrit. I studied for it, and then I was mortified to learn that the computer programmer did not speak in Sanskrit or read it. But anyways, we moved on from there. So Sanskrit writ is something that I wrote afterwards, and so that is going to have to take all the elements of the culture of where Sanskrit originates from, and that terms and context that I would obviously want to ask to shoot a lot of that probably in the country of India. So let me see. Bring out the truth in us. Bring out the truth in us. Have to go back and reread it. Sounds like a love song. I'm not normally lovey-dovey. Fatal Attraction could probably be, whatever people want it to be. Take a vote. Do a survey. See how they think that should be done for the music video stuff. Phenomenal Woman. I would want, obviously, women. And whoever thinks they're women. Whoever can tolerate each other at a table with me to go over that. Okay, there is no excuse. So I didn't really go into that as far as I don't know how to portray that on video. I have to go back and reread it. So I did talk about Holocaust cost, and that is super duper sensitive as far as the topic. But I think that, I would have to contact, because I already talked with people that I met with that were obviously, if they were my age, we were not alive during this time. But basically, if I sat someone down and said, hey, even though this song has to do with studies relating to kind of what we're contextualizing, that means all of this will go to a Holocaust museum anywhere that someone wants to listen and debate it and have it in appropriate context. And so I don't want to go into specifics over why I did that. I'm just explaining to you that that's why. And that all that you are, that sounds kind of lovey-dovey, I'm not sure. I love so forbidden. Same kind of a thing. Ultimatum, social butterfly. Now, arrow, let's see, I'm saying wrong. Agrotant, that may be the one that's in Greek besides sacred text, but I don't know because I have to go back and read both of them. I think sacred text, I was talking to someone on Fiverr, and I was trying to pay them to help me translate, and then Uber had an app that I downloaded that I normally haven't used as an app. I've used it for language called the Rosetta Stone because I studied the Rosetta Stone extensively as a younger person. So what was I going to say? The code thing didn't work, but I did download it and attempted to try to use it. And then, back to videos. Anything that goes with speaking in different languages or being a part of different cultures or countries or places, I would still want to probably visit locations or have people, if they want to include their stuff, also do that for me, share time to do that, but also be able to make sure that when you're doing it in a split location type of a way, that you're able to make sure that you are communicating how you're going to put those scenes from the different locations together to make sure that you're not overlapping, to not explaining like the purposes of the song in terms of how you're going to collaborate on it. So what I mean by that is that if I am a native English speaker and the person on the other side of the continent, which I don't know if that's that far, is in Greece or they speak Greek, wherever they are, that you make sure all of the video that goes with the language that's within it doesn't overlap and that the context is there, so that when it's speaking in English versus Greek, or if it's back and forth, it physically shows that on camera within what you're talking about in those languages, as far as making that into the musical part of the music video. Winding Road was really a crunch time. I had like a segment of them that was like kind of covered up with whatever I could think of and writing really as intensely as I could over coming up with the title line first. So Winding Road, because for what I remember about writing it, is that it talks about something, and it may or may not be metaphors in terms of how you're going down the winding road by the context of that, but I would still want the visualization of physical, either deteriorating topic of what is going through a winding road, right? Or physical footage of within what we're talking about. So Just for Sports, I think, was one of them that also was speaking over, that had multiple languages. And I have to go back and double check that. But anything that says sports in it, and I think that for anything that's related to sports, I was a pretty athletic young person. Football was one of my major things I loved to play. I didn't make the team because I was more like that movie Rudy, was having to learn, and I'm telling you now, do not play football in the streets. It's concrete. But anything with sports, I would want to have a plethora of different, I don't know if I want to call them snapshots. I would want to call them physical game time footage. But what I would want to do, because I have different people in different generations of what like they constitute as sports. And remember, we have language barriers. Like football in Spanish is actually soccer in America. So I would still want that to be shot in different ways. And so I think, because I'm also like into explaining like exercise in terms of like I am for people being healthy in sports. I would want to have as many sports related items over the visual part, and then it has to sidestep into the topic. So even if I took something to be like, I was about to call it fuddy-duddy, which probably isn't the correct word. If I literally, like let's say that I wanted to explain relationships from sports, okay? Probably really, really bad analogy, But what I'm saying is that if the context of the song says something like, oh, but just for play, right? Or just for sports, it would be specific to that interaction where I could be, like there was a guy I think I briefly dated from a hockey team here locally in Dallas that was a coach. Maybe he had like a favorite team. I don't know if he was with the bigger league people. But anyways, the point is he played with kids. He did something with acts of kindness. Operation Kindness was for dogs, so I have to take it back. But my point is that if I'm making out with a hockey guy, right, and we're describing a relationship on camera that we're relating it to hockey, they're going to be in hockey gear. So my point is that being in between the real-time aspects of physical, I wouldn't, like as a person who's played football, I wouldn't give you my sports picks or my sports betting because I don't do either one of those for the most part as an expert. But I would say that if I was a coach to do a playbook, I wouldn't give that out in such detail over the physical aspects of like watching people play when they're practicing. It would still be something like in between if there was controversy between two teams, like would we normally glorify controversy in a positive way where people live in divided households because they both root for opposite teams. It would be more like that if it was on a personal level, but on a more global scale, if I had to ask other teams that I don't know what their teams are in other countries in different sports, but I would say, hey, could I use your B-roll of your public broadcast, and then could I edit it and play with it and put it in my music video? That is what I would probably want to do. And I'd want to do that if it was in different languages, if I use that, so that it would be more geographically and regionally accurate for the purposes of what my albums do anyway. So it would still give credence to where stuff originates from, but then it would expose the listeners and viewers or whatever to the other cultural aspects of the different regions in the positive manner. Now, Get Up and Dance, I wrote really, really, really young. So Get Up and Dance was written when I was like 12 years old or something. So Get Up and Dance was my first exposure to, I think, what they tried to consider to be electronic. And I don't want to say the word rave because I had to clean up a lot of people throwing up at raves. But before there were raves, I want to separate that. So techno e-music that you could get in trouble with at home blasting too loud on your boombox on a bicycle with double D batteries driving down your neighborhood, which is what I sometimes do. And it would upset older people. I would say that I wanted to mention this earlier. So there was a person that sang a song that had seizures, and she described it, and I thought that is the most beautiful thing I ever heard. And then when I heard that it was because she had seizures and she was describing it, it wasn't because she was like in a relationship with making her nauseous. I thought that was more beautiful because I love humans, and I think that humans overcoming stuff like adversity, being able to survive illnesses and to live beyond that and stuff like that. I think that's the purpose of us being human. So, I mean, for me, thinking that humans are beautiful. So anyway, so Get Up and Dance would still have some kind of, I guess, dancing. But for the most part, since I wrote that when I was 12, I know that it's probably a word that I'm not pronouncing because I don't know what word to use. I don't want to make one up. So I want to say that the choreography for whatever we call as like techno from back in the day before it became more of a movement-y thing called EDM in present day, kind of. I want to say that it would be something with that, and then probably have what I was going back to the seizures thing is that I normally don't think of myself as doing music videos with strobe lights for a reason, because it can mess with someone's like vestibular and it can cause people to have seizures, and that can be a teaching point, right? But so when I do videos that I want to include everyone, I normally say that if I know that as like a knowledge and I want to make sure that everyone's included, I try not to do something that could be sensitive to any population, which probably to some people sounds like I'm trying to be politically correct.
But what I'm saying is, I, as a younger 12-year-old, would probably have thought it was super cool and that this would be a music video, that all I would do is put on a strobe light and play with black paint, just like when I was pregnant, about to go to Joel's volcano before I literally gave birth when I was 19. And I would think, forget Joe's volcano, okay, from San Antonio. What I'm trying to say is that putting on a strobe light right in front of a room that is black and just has paint or something and then trying to dance, as a grown-up, I don't see that as being what I envisioned to say get up and dance, because that's what we were trying to do, in dark-lit rooms to interact with music. When I learned that strobe lights can cause seizures. So my point is that I would have more of a format where people had actual dance moves to the EDM type of stuff that we listen to kind of today. I don't think that I would incorporate for this particular piece. I don't personally think I would incorporate different styles of dance on the first round or version of whatever that take would be. I would probably say that if I had country music behind it, I would incorporate it being mixed through country music. But because that probably isn't like the format, it would just be like more freestyling, like what we consider, I don't know if we use that word anymore. Freestyle, it means you don't have any moves. You're just kind of trying to make something up by the beats of the music, I think, and make up like your own dance moves. So I think that because that's kind of the topic, I would do that. Doctrinaire, I have some like friends through friends online, right? I guess that's how we call it, that are super lovey-dovey, and they're always doing business together in like a super fancy way. And so that specifically was written in thinking of them, and I've communicated that to them. So I don't know how I would do that, because I'm really not a lovey-dovey person publicly. As far as like I personally wasn't raised watching romance stuff. That always made me kind of nauseous. I felt like it was fake. It was like over, like kill with most stuff. It was kind of gross. I always grew up more in the horror sections and stuff. So that's more difficult for me to do, right? To think of like putting on the persona that I had in 8th grade acting to be the character that was in Miss Parker's class, who was not related to other people that are in my family that have mixed blood that are also named Parker, even though that would be funny if you asked the theater teacher for something that she taught us in 8th grade class. Higher Antical, see, I'm not pronouncing it right. Breakup song. So, since I've been fighting with someone who is a pilot and a part arts instructor, who's one of my girlfriends historically as a mentor, I didn't write this about her, right? I'm not a lesbian. I'm not hating if you're a lesbian. I'm just saying that the guy that she was telling me to go put my name as, the busking person, right? That I was like getting kind of agitated over time with, because there was so much coaching from behind her discussing, everything that went into that. Someone did record me saying that was my ex-husband. So that is why I wrote that song. That song is about Elon Musk because of her, because she has a real IMDb and I do not. Transcendent Garden. So I am currently in the vicinity of, I know I'm in Dallas right now. I'm just trying to think of the name. I think it's at the Dallas Arboretum. I've studied a lot through the DeGoyer Museum, which is separate, but the DeGoyer family had a thing there. This is technically just about the gardens, and me looking up words that I don't know if I can pronounce to sing bitter plants in gardens. So that is what the song is about, and it doesn't have any poisonous plants to my knowledge. I know that if someone has any of my chess sets, there was one board that I wanted to physically take poisonous plants and put them where I could see through them and then play on top of them, because I thought that would be cool, and I researched that. So happy Father's Day. That is gonna have to be something with dads. Zerable. I have to go back and read. I don't even remember how I came up with that. I'm sure that's a real word. I didn't make up the word because I'm pretty sure I researched it. And then this is the breakup. Kind of same context as far as like, oh, that's why I probably think there's two breakup songs. So one of them is a breakup song that is about Elon Musk, and the other is this is a breakup. I may have done that over twice because of her and I discussing other stuff. But Orange Peppered Hair, I think, okay, so Orange Peppered Hair was the original, and that's because he had orange hair. And he was in the Navy, and I'm falling asleep because I'm not looking at my contact list. I mailed it to his family's mother's house, and we were shooting pool where I had a BBC. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It was an APA for British style. He was the head coach person. So Axel, and then I redid something that I cannot speak as far as I don't want to say cryptography, right? So I did like rearrange the letters here that came from a word. Obviously, that's not going to be difficult for you to find. But I didn't use special characters. So I wanted to say that I have to go back and look at some of my notes. But I'm trying to say, like, as far as the Cyrillic or Russian languages, I didn't make it completely under that, right? And I have studied airplanes from Russian technical manuals because that was a requirement to become an astronaut. And then I eventually could claim that we could launch from Texas soil. Worth the wait, BG Ness. So I think that would have been like hipper for me to do while I was in my 20s when I wrote it. And I think that now I'm going to have to like hire people that are cooler than me because they're younger than me and they're the new generation of the next workforce coming in. And, you know, we're all kind of sharing space depending on our experiences where like that obviously has like, it's not, I want to say it was not influenced by what I was talking about earlier from the Japanese slang. And if it was, you know what, if it was, because who gave it to me, it was when I was doing crossover between some of the community colleges. Not the community colleges, from the community college to the state college. So I did not make up slang words for this. It has Italian and German in the writings, and I really did write like 400 or 500 letters, and I had people help me over like some topics, and then this sounds kind of like hip hoppy, so it would still need collaboration to make sure that whoever the videography comes with that kind of an attitude is probably someone that's more in their 20s. Mock initiate, so mock is specific to not spelled mock like mock trial, right? Even though some people mispronounce or misspell that when they sell it on different whatever they call it things. So mock is supposed to be G-forces. So it literally means like different types of mock speed, and that's why it has the dot next to it. So I put like, it's supposed to be like mock speed, you're supposed to know that. And then it initiates, and that's kind of what the song's about. Stardom, life is, for a second to the touch. Feels like jazz hands, so I'm going to go with jazz hands, even though they're not jazzy. I don't know. I have to go back and read the lyrics, so I'm kind of like what that is. I feel like that could be any free formatting. For a second to the touch, though, because I think that's more of an intimate song, and I also have a song named Touch, but I publicly say that I tried to write about the word touch in the context of like I was shooting pool with someone, and then we were talking about, he had 5 kids. I don't have 5 kids that are totally mine, right? I have like 1 kid, and I've had a guardian set over another person, but other than that, the whole For a Second in the Touch is super intimate, and then the other song Touch is like trying to be intimate, but it sounds more intimate than it was between me and the person that I inspiredly tried to write over. So Flying to Forget, since that mentions flying, right? I think there was one time that I designed headsets that said I could like sing while I'm flying. It could like record me in the cockpit. and that would actually be my headset. I don't know how efficient that would be, but I kind of feel like depending on how long you have to fly, maybe it's something to do. So anyways, flying to forget, if I could do that, right, that would be cool if I could come up with that to do an actual engineering side for the way that I designed them. I'm sure someone has my notes, so they do whatever they want with them, or my drawings for describing it that way. So that obviously I would be also consulting with like NASA, because the air, or the elements, right? The element of that is like having the attitude that you leave your problems on the ground and then you emotionally leave them on the ground and you're prepared to fly. So that music video, there would be a lot of I'm trying not to say shots in the air, right? So, because I've had to work with people and I've had to learn that they talk about popping off in school zones. And I tell them, you know what, if it was me catching you or me seeing you doing that, I would have shot first and you'd be dead. And then we would ask questions later because I wouldn't be okay with that. But anyway, so we're moving away from that as a topic to video in the air, to film in the air, right? That I would say that that is like the purpose of that song. That it wouldn't be me just sitting in a moving vehicle. It would be, well, you could probably green screen it. But my point is that if that was the motivation for the song, just like I mentioned earlier, collaborations with locations that are specific, if they're supposed to have an attitude about visiting places I've never physically been before, and I've just viewed online or communicated to do business there or whatever, that's kind of where it goes. So in loving you, kind of lovey-dovey, would need consult. Ultimate sacrifice, I would get feedback up front from, we just had Memorial Day, I think it was like yesterday or the day before, pretty sure it was yesterday, or that was the day before. So, because that was the day before. So anyway, so that is a topic that I was trying to make the sensitivities of how we pay respects to the dead of people that have come before us in building this great nation, in terms of like using that as the sarcastic perspective of what they would say, having had to pay for that. So I personally don't believe in ghosts. Some people do. There's been very few times when I've had any kind of shared sensational feeling, like the death of a dog, or I still like half awake and thinking I can feel it with me, kind of thing. But my point is, so that song, since that's what the purposes were, that would be educationally explained through a lot of the images of what I just said. So Chariots of the Tomb, gotta have some kind of a tomb, but Chariots of the Tomb, because you're talking about the people that bring, like, I don't want to say just ancient Egypt, in different cultures for funeral proceedings, when you're talking about how tombstones are laid, or how you're talking about distances in between, kind of thing. I have to go back through that, but I know just by someone kind of mentioning it to me that they liked it, or that it was like something that they cared about. That it explained, like, those of us that maybe don't, like, in some countries they worship their ancestors in a different way that we have to medically tell them not to. But if you give honoring to the idea of, as an American, I go mark a grave, for example, or have explained of what a chariot is of a tomb. So, okay, happy birthday. I think it could be any format, and I love doing people's birthdays. As far as like coming up and helping them with their parties, I haven't been able to have one for a while. How it really is just sounds like attitude-y. Open Broken Hearts, again, it's kind of sappy, kind of romantic-y, kind of not normally something I write, kind of pushed to it. Verdure, have to go back and look. The depth of lyricism, same thing. But I mean, that's not English. So verdure, I think, is in proper English. About You
which path to take. I was talking earlier about me and my dog, and that I went through all the medical sciencey thingies. With me tonight, cheater, sociomate, so skipping those. With me tonight sounds kind of like that. Overcome the past would be just in the context of that. I'm skipping over skeletons in my closet because I already talked about that. Ancient province. So I know that I was with some people from the University of Texas at Austin over that. And so I researched that, talking to the person on the table in terms of their Greek mythology, I think, of whatever it was that they were studying. And so I came up with that, and I was writing as I was lively there. I don't know if that's right. So I was there live with them. Grandmother, I would probably want to do something where I would be relation to not just the fact that I am kind of a grandmother with a guardian son, like whatever they need me for that. But what I want to say is, since I look like my grandmother, right, and that's always looked like a big ordeal, I would want to do something that would honor her. So it goes with that and so forth. All the reasons, teenager no more, Bruce News, by What It Only One. So some of those what are like sensitive topics, so I would get other outside information. Antiquity, I have to also look at to see whether or not that was one that went with the ancient province. I think that those two were semi kind of put together and then written apart. Then I had to bring it back. So like I had a specific format after discussing and researching it for that particular process. Breaking Bravo today. So flying to forget what I just mentioned. Maybe I said that wrong. So breaking Bravo today rings more as talking about NASA. Flying to forget sounds more like I'm just getting my pilot lessons and then I'm pissed off and I want to leave men on the ground because they're pissing me off. But irises, so that would be about that song. Brown peppered hair, clean version. It would be a clean version of that. So de essence, and then I'm like here, but I'm not going to try to butcher the name of what would dough in French or something. I don't know that I know how to pronounce that totally. Remember our soldiers. So I think I mentioned that earlier. Like I knew that from context, that when I say if it has to do with military, like that has to have that in it. So behind the oxygen, I think I would just collaborate that with the context of how I wrote that. Toxin, same kind of a thing. You know, I don't know how I would do that just yet. I wouldn't be advocating for promoting toxic behavior on film. So I would still be like kind of super duper sensitive with that. I'm going to skip over a conscious canvas and go back to it after I go through this list. Source code, because I already mentioned that was like a movie, I would literally just have, because I don't have the movie rights, right, to go into what that is, I would probably ask to be able to recreate something between the context of what the subject matter is and the physical computer programming in terms of not giving out like anything that would be secretive in terms of like trade secret for how people do their source codes. Could we stop time? They could go back and forth between generations. David's already covered it over. Now on with the show, something dramatic with theater though, and I don't know if I would mix movie theater versus live theater. Valentine, context, innocence of the guilty, context, anywhere without you, same kind of a thing. So back to a conscious canvas. A conscious canvas, a canvas first of all is kind of like a blackboard. And it's something that you normally paint. So I have to sometimes explain to people that are not a native English speaker that a canvas is a medium. It is something that you are using to put something to like send a message to, or show a message of. It's like to put it in art form. And then, so I don't know, because I take it literally to say canvas, and so it would be something within that context that would probably use different mediums
in terms of what the canvas that you're painting is in the literal sense to what you're metaphorically speaking of that a canvas is that you're painting. Like if I have a friend that's a legitimate model, she's gorgeous, that's what she does for a living. She's also an actress or something, and she's kind of short of her daughter Autumn. I think that's one of her daughter's names. You know, they model and do stuff together. But she says that she would be able to have sushi eaten on her, right? So something like that, because that's more sensitive to like the body being a canvas. That's where I would still kind of want to go through and say, okay, how am I going to portray this? Sacrilegious, probably should put that under like the, I don't want to say ego because I'm overusing it. But I don't know how I would do sacrilegious other than the context of what it's coming at that's going away from the opposite of that. Natus, right? Hopefully I pronounced that right. Means kind of like a birthmark type of thing, I think, from what I remember. And so I would probably try to make birthmarks beautiful. And I would want to have a bunch of people that had different birthmarks as far as that just in the video. So I think I skipped over modus operandi. And I think one of the reasons, because I also discussed that earlier, is because when you talk about using in a criminal element way, finding out what someone's motive for a crime is versus like saying that you had motivation to not commit a criminal act. I think because I've done so much research, too much in like explaining different stuff that I have very little background in being an expert in, but I've had, published papers here and there within just the classical context of criminal justice stuff. What I'm trying to say is what I was discussing earlier about physically going through the authentication of blockchaining, what something belongs to. Like if I said, hey, this person was law enforcement, so that it needs to be you, as far as like how I've donated through or that I'm publishing, like without like embarrassing the person, right? So I'm trying to say that since most of that and that is a physical definition of a textbook construct, I have to go back and look at it and then see what I think would be appropriate in terms of it not being taken to the wrong context of, like, I think on a different song, I was really explicit and very, I don't know if you want to call it expressive, but I went into explaining, like, in Latin, like, who says just because I'm thinking about you it's a crime? So the point is the point of the context is that, like, me writing to try to say, hey, you went through a tragedy and I'm trying to kiss your ass, which is basically what I did, even though because you're a guy and you don't deal with your emotions, and that's one of those people. So I probably just ruined this thing. So my point is that since I put that like in the literal Latin tense, for saying what a modus operandi is, like who says that it's a criminal nature for me to think about you. So that's one of the reasons that I try to separate the difference, because remember my own course where I'm trying to say cognitively, I don't care what you think about it, put on paper and deter yourself from doing, because preventing your crime is different than involving it. But I'm trying to say that since it goes kind of with that format, I think that the song is like a mixture of something else, because I don't know if I put activist reus. So like mens reus, right? Like when I was talking earlier about legal definition, the super duper lovely stuff that I'm not really into, when I'm being dramatic to try to convey emotion for like idolizing someone in their moment of weakness, which is kind of where some of that emotional package came from me trying to translate to that person to at least make them feel special enough to get off my ass. I want to say that is more of, where I'm trying to separate that. I'm trying to be careful because I haven't read this. I'm telling you from memory, and I wrote it and I sung it, and then I don't have the visual boards of what everything kind of says with the fact that I've never shot music videos before, right? I'm not talking. I've done reels, I've been a producer, but that's where I'm going with that. So that went pretty much into depth with that. Mammon, I don't know, other than like the stuff that goes with the context of what that word means. Prisoner of war is kind of super duper sensitive. I didn't mention it earlier under the medical neuroscience background stuff for me coding it, but I did put that as super duper sensitive. So pom-poms, right, is not supposed to be physical pom-poms. The M literally means the W upside down. And I did that because I was trying to make an acronym without putting pow-pow. So I'm going to let the dog in. Okay, and so prisoner of war was supposed to be more of a rescue mission of soldiers that have gone to get people out of being a prisoner of war. And so since that is the super literal context there, it would have a lot of historical footage and videos of anything that I could use or recreate of real life stories of someone that is more experienced and that setting. And I have met people that have been freed from POW camps. So I would give credence and honor to the people that are in that group. So and donations and proceeds for anyone listening or buying that stuff, I would disclose that. Like I'm kind of trying to be open with where dollars go in terms of like transparency, to say that I feel like when you write about something to talk to commercialize it, your giving back also matters, that you kind of explain why that has educational value. Friendship, I think friendship is super universal, so you can do that a whole bunch of different ways. Do It Better, I don't remember that's a song, I have to go back and read that. Wit Wanton is something that I researched that is not a native, I'm almost a Native American and I'm not Native American. It's not an American English, I almost said cuneiform, I don't want to go that far back. Okay, so it's an English word, I think, or it's a hierarchical super English word that Native Americans and British people use, I think. I have to go back and look at it. I just let you in that group. CS is this, relationshipy. Keep a secret. I don't know. I'd have to look at that. Creme de la is more popish. So I almost said poppy, but we just did like a VFW thing, which I haven't written yet. And so creme de la is supposed to be like more of a societal, attitudinal video. So it would probably have way cuter people than me. They would be doing something and they'd be like, creme de la, blah, 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 blah. I don't know why they're texting about it. I have a real estate profile. So Kedum, I attempted to do a Kedum group, which was supposed to be like a real estate thing, but have to go back through the context of that song. Agenda for Crescenda, I don't even know if that's a song or if that's just something that I did to take notes. I have to go back and look at that. Working Late, I think that was under, I don't know that I can talk for this hour, that it was under something in terms of like, oh, you're waiting on somebody, you know, and, or no, I'm sorry, they're waiting on you. But whatever, so in the context. Majesty Sanctuary, so that would still be about the intersection of the differences of sanctuaries versus, however, I guess you run your whole life if you take it into that context. And then cremated, probably not the best. Oh, let me see that. That's my shoe. I didn't my shoe without my permission. I used to spank Billy Burt in algebra class. Okay. And he was also the TA because he was the son of my algebra teacher. Okay, I don't remember where he got toured or where he toured, but he joined from the armed forces. So, what do you say about a song that is titled Cremated? I don't know. I just know that I wrote it because I was told that they were going to do that to one of my relatives, and I said I need the death certificate. But and then they didn't want to give it to me. But that's fine. So the oratory, do I think that I'm going to? Sorry, before I move on, do I think in dealing with death that I'm going to really have like ashes and urns like spewing everywhere? The song, probably not. I don't think I'm gonna like zombie it, if that's a thing. But I just don't know because kind of an awkward song topic. I did call a funeral home that was supposed to have cremated my dad, and I told them that I just read an article about their mental health and have discussions and stuff. So the oratory, I think that oratory is like a process of something that you defend, but it's in a different educational country that I am currently in for America. I have to go back and look, but I think that that's the context of it. Sickened kind of sounds like why you're sickened by something. Together coming undone sounds like a relationship thingy. Social insider. So this has nothing to do with being a socialist, by the way. As far as communism, not about that. Come here. This is about one of my social circle people, right? So me trying to like portray understanding how more fabulous this person is than I am for her being like in the crowd, and I'm just kind of like observing whatever it is that you're doing. So that's kind of the way that I wrote it, I think. And then everything reminds me of you. Sounds like I could do a bunch of stuff with other people's memory. Just kidding. So everything reminds me of you would be in the context of, and I'm sorry, that sounded bad. So I also just got on someone who reported that we're trying to falsify memories or try to alter like ongoing investigations that they shouldn't be attempting to alter. So everything reminds me of you is really more like if I'm in a crowd and I'm having lunch alone, the waiter comes to me and all I can see is your face, which is super creepy, right? In the context of not being like missing someone, but or maybe, I'm sorry, maybe if someone has some kind of aphasia, then you said that wrong, I apologize. But my point is that I didn't mean it in that context. So I meant that whatever you're doing in terms of trying to explain the emotion of when you're longing for someone and then you feel and see them everywhere, hopefully not to the point where you get labeled as totally schizophrenic or anything, not to like go there, but to say like in a loving way that if you had superpowers to be have positive symptoms, which is how we classify some of that, I would take that into the literal context of explaining to the reader, the listener, and the viewer that the person is physically being reminded to like an extreme that things will change faces and forms in the context of that they can't get out of their head, and that it's like something that is very impressionable on the person for not being able to get out of their memory. Okay, taste so true. So I kind of went over that. Sitting around, it's kind of like a country song. I'm skipping causing a ruckus. Well, Mensa, I already kind of talked about cross mats, dragon flag. So I tried to make up that word. There's a restaurant I love to go to called the Dragonfly. And also in one of the movies where I really identified as viewing the whole series from being a single mother and having to live in a lot of hotels when I was pregnant, before I got my own place, essentially. One of the movies, the Dragonfly was an actual place in Connecticut for the physical series. And the mother had to kind of live what we call here in Texas, like they had the Rocks the Cradle house or something. It sounded like she kind of had to go through that in order to have her child. She had to work and live in an inn and make her way to management. And so my point is that I, instead of me just straight up not even asking, can I use the word Dragonfly because I love your restaurant? I changed it and I said, I'm putting a flag and a dragon, even though that's not what I meant, because I just didn't want to like copyright or infringe upon someone's restaurant versus their hotel in a series. So I tried to write it like that, but I don't know if it came out that way. That's where I got the word though. And so there's also a physical dragon in front of the dragonfly. But going back to where I'm at, Eternal Declaration. I know you want to go back outside, but it's super hot, and I just let you in, so no. Eternal Declaration sounds like I'm pledging my love to you. We're taking vows, blah blah blah. So I'm eternally declaring that. I have to go back and read though to see if that's something that I wrote for like a partner, or if that's something I wrote where you. Something I wanted to mention under the .faith story is that if someone wants to use the music and lyrics, by all means, if they want to debate how to apply it to religious context, like declaring, like when I took vows for religious context, when I used to be Catholic, if I eternally declared, even though I ended up getting pregnant after taking those vows, that I was going to follow chastity, charity, and poverty. So I did that in good faith, all right, for a period of years at some points, that would be different from the context of that. But anyways, you would put that in the video either way you take that. So close, again, sounds relationshipy. Art of the Monster, I don't know yet. Hunger for You, I said I don't know yet. Or I'll never know. We already described the first. So we get through making it towards. Well, let me go all the way down, or is that it? Okay, I know that I missed one in between, unless I changed the title thing. Okay, so there. So Pearl in the Urn. An urn is kind of graphic, and it's literal. And then there's some metaphorical layers over physically saying, when you're talking about an oyster, and you have a pearl that becomes in it, or however you take that. When I say pearl in the ear, none of my concern. So the way that is kind of like this, in terms of like portraying the type of song, I don't know how I would put that into the music video part. Trail of Years is super sensitive, so I probably would want to hire actors or whoever they call people that work in music videos that would be within the context of what that is about. And I think that brings me to the end of it. So I am going to exit out of here, and then I'm going to end stream.